Well, as the country celebrates 30 years of democracy, multiple factors have become a threat to workers in various sectors. So let's discuss the state of the world of work, the challenges and possible solutions with Reuben Maleka from the Public Service Association. Hopefully we'll have Simphiwe Gada from DENOSA join us in just a moment, but we also have SADTU's General Secretary Mugwena Maluleke with us. Good morning to all of you, and thank you very much for your time. I guess the best place to start, we'll drill down into your individual sectors and some of the unique challenges that you have been experiencing and what the future of world looks like in each of your sectors. But maybe let's just get some reflection on what you think have been maybe one or two of the highs and lows in your particular sector over the last 30 years. And Reuben, I'm going to kick it off with you. I mean, we know that the PSA has been in the headlines for a number of different reasons: strikes, difficulties in negotiating settlements. It's been a tumultuous time from a labour perspective for you. What is your reflection looking like?
Yeah, thank you very much, Iman, and good morning to the viewers at home. First of all, one would first reflect on the fact that the past 30 years we have seen the enactment of the Labour Relations Act, which is the principal act that arises from Section 23 of the Constitution, which also gave rise to other supported legislation such as the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, the Employment Equity Act, and others, the Skills Development Act. So from that point of view, one would say that it was a great achievement of the past 30 years to have the LRA in place, placing the Labour Relations Act of 1956. So this act gave rise to many rights to workers, especially the public servants. As you know, that public servants did not have the full rights that they could enjoy. And as a result, one would say that the PSA has been critical, has been playing a very pivotal role in ensuring that we actually exercise the rights conferred by this act. The LRA, we have gone through much of the dispute in the public service. We have gone through the dialogue. One also appreciates that the LRA gave rise to establishment of collective bargaining, where today we are sitting with the PSCBC and its sister sector council such as the LRC, the public health, where unions, employer can sit around and talk about issues that affect workers. Despite that, there are challenges that face workers in general in the public service. One is the issue of the high vacancy rate in the public service. It's a big problem. Secondly, is the moral fiber that combines between the society and the public service, where we have seen that if today you ask any child, do you want to become a teacher? Do you want to become a nurse? I can assure you that out of 10 of the kids, 8 would say no, precisely because of the loss of that particular appetite of professional professions in the public service. Yeah. No one wants to become a teacher. No one wants to become a nurse. So also, that makes worse is the deepening economic crisis that we find ourselves in today, where the wages that we have achieved over the period of past 30 years have now become worthless. They have stagnated. We are sitting with the high interest rate, which we understand the Reserve Bank is hell-bent on not moving from its stance of cutting the interest rate. The interest rate has chowed on public servant salaries to extend that 75% of public servant salaries goes into debt. And that creates a serious challenge for us because we're not now noticing the achievements that we have made over the past 30 years through collective bargaining, precisely because of the economic crisis, because of the high interest rate that we believe that it's time that the Reserve Bank consider it. Lastly, one would not forget that the job losses that we see as a result of loss of other business, government key sectors such as DENEL, such as post office, is a big challenge to the country that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency.
Well, let's go into, and you've set a really great context, I think, for us there, Reuben, just broadly speaking, around where, on the one hand, you have a legal framework that supports the advancement of worker rights, probably more than at any other time in South Africa's history. And on the other side, you have the corrosive realities around inflation and the lived reality of a number of workers across the country. Simphiwe, you've joined the conversation. I want to quickly bring you in. Let's talk about the state of nurses in South Africa today. And it comes in a context where South Africa faces a severe shortage of skilled workers, according to Life Healthcare. An estimated 100,000 nurses simply won't be there by 2030 that we need. It's a massive vacuum and a serious crisis we are heading towards. How did we get there?
Well, good morning, Iman, and thanks for inviting us, and good morning to my comrades there. Well, it's the issue when we approach it, I always treat it the same way as load shedding. Warning shots were were shot, and there was a research that was done which indicated that we're headed for a crisis. However, there was no adequate response as far as expediting the training of nurses, because for about 4 to 5 years, we didn't produce nurses across the country because of the curriculum change and the shifting of the curriculum from the Department of Health to the Higher Education Department. That had an impact, but we believe that we can still be able to, to mitigate the situation, provided that we become intentional about it, government becomes intentional and invest money. So the biggest challenge that we have, which has led to this situation, Iman, in our view, is that, money that is spent on healthcare has not been necessarily viewed as an investment, but it has been viewed as an expenditure. We know that any money that we spend on health will have positive spin-offs for the economy, because health on its own plays a major role as far as boosting the economy, ensuring that people are productive, they're at work, because if you've got a nation that is not well, that will have a negative impact on the economy. So it's a matter of government being intentional, investing the necessary resources, because as we speak right now, if you look at the current intake of student nurses across all the institutions of higher learning, you take, for instance, UJ does not even have more than 60. You go to the colleges, to what we call the colleges of nursing, which are owned by government. You don't have anything more than 200 per province, and that is a recipe for disaster. And this is what, as the Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa, have been calling for, to say government must take intentional decision, bold decision, as far as shifting funds and ensuring that we go and recruit and strengthen the current workforce that we have in our facilities, and also by ensuring that we take those who are in the system to go and do the scarce skills, because post-COVID, Iman, the first world countries started recruiting, in particular in South Africa, because they were already preparing for any imminent, trajectory that they would face, while as a country in South Africa, we're not forward thinking. I mean, just last year in the month of August, we had more than 200 specialized nurses that left the country to go and join other countries. And this is information that is available, for instance, to government. Just last year, the German government wrote to the South African government to say they were looking at, offering employment opportunities for nurses. And I was surprised that that kind of communique was also forwarded to the organization, DENOSA, to assist in recruiting. And I was in awe to say, why would you take your own workforce and say and encourage that they go to another country? So this simply tells you that we do not have a clear plan. We do not have a clear leaders that have got a clear vision about the healthcare system of this country. And once we fix those two things and we've got a direct response plan as to how do we want to push the healthcare system forward, we believe that we can still mitigate against those challenges that we face.
Mugwena, a view from you and SADTU around your existence, some of the gains, and then these challenges around skills training and some of the others that your colleagues have shared.
Yeah, thank you so very much, and greetings to my colleagues as well and the viewers at home. Indeed, where I could start is that in the education sector, we have seen many legislation that have been passed that critically was the returning the schools to the communities, so that we move from the state schools that were almost like military schools when they're supposed to be educational, to public schools which are basically owned by the communities and therefore managed by the communities through the SGB. That to us has been very fundamental in transforming our schools, integration and democratization of our schools, because it belongs to the communities. Secondly, it is that we have seen that many children have been able to be enrolled. UNESCO has recorded that South Africa is one of the countries that have been able to successfully meet the developmental goals and as well as the sustainable development goals in terms of the access to education and the enrollment that has improved from basic education. And it is improving in the higher education as well. And the issue of funding in the higher education sector, where the NSFAS, whilst there are problems and so forth, but we cannot ignore the fact that many communities, many families have been able to realize the impact of that particular funding to the students, to the extent that some were the first in their generation to be enrolled in higher education and be able to graduate degrees and have been able to find some employment. Some are entrepreneurs on the basis that they were able to be given that particular opportunity and so forth. We have seen improvement, of course, in terms of a number of areas that the legacy of apartheid in terms of infrastructure is what is still challenging us at the end of the day. Whilst there's an improvement in terms of infrastructure, in terms of building, but we have got a very stubborn legacy of apartheid in terms of infrastructure. For example, we have to appreciate the fact that the government over 350 years has never built a single school in the rural areas. The kings in the rural areas, the chief, the indunas, were the only people who were mobilized into society to build schools. And those schools were not built in terms of the requirement of building a classroom that is conducive for learning, but it was really to say they can have an intervention program so that their communities can receive education. These are some of the challenges that we're facing. It is that today we are seated with a number of teachers that are not being employed as a result of austerity measures. They have been trained. We have got enough teachers that have been trained. However, they are not able to join the workforce on the basis that we have a treasury. In terms of a new liberal policy that they're implementing, obviously pushed by the IMF and pushed by the World Bank, is that there must be austerity measures. Education is not an expense; it is an investment, like Reuben has said. So these are some of the things that we have got to look at as we move forward. But the 30th of democracy is that we have seen a lot of improvements that have happened. Problems are there and they have got to be resolved, but you cannot write off 350 years of deprivation, non-infrastructure, non-development to deal with this. So therefore, we need to address the issues of the skills, and then the curriculum has got to be recalculated so that we then address issues of technology. We have to address issues of language so that we're then able to improve the intake in mathematics, in science and technology through the development of language.
You know, as I listen to each of you, and the responses have been so thoughtful, but also multi-layered and complex. I wish that we had time to go into each of those things. When you talk, as you have, Mugwena, at the end, around the legacies of an entire demographic of people being kept behind and suddenly catapulted into a democratic space where a lot of things have to be created and built from the ground up, essentially, to create and build a functioning country on all of these different levels, whether it's in schools, the public service, or whether it is in the healthcare profession. And perhaps there would be time in the future to be able to do that. But as we sort of, run out of minutes, I want to quickly touch on this about whether there is a new way, notwithstanding all of the challenges that South Africa has, which are multifaceted and legacy and historical. There have been crippling strikes. We looked just months ago to the strike by healthcare workers, for example, to stay away, leading to the courts having to get involved to get them back to work. Public sector unions say they're going to go back to their members. Again, they have to seek a new mandate ahead of government wage negotiations. And I think they begin, might be in September this year for the next financial year, to try and find a new mandate ahead of those government wage negotiations. SADTU's protests last year that drew a lot of condemnation because of the impact to learners, especially matrics. Very briefly, and to each of you, is there a different and new way that you are thinking of how you negotiate. You have the back of the workers, but at the same time, you serve the public in the way that you had promised to serve. And I think, Reuben, we kick off with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Iman. Obviously, as you are aware, the PSA is one of the trade unions that we've been advocating for professionalism in the public service, meaning that what we want to see is that all institutions, whether it's a learning institution, a hospital, we want to see our own people, the South African, receiving a better service from our own members, which are PSA members. At the same time, when it comes to issue of condition of service, we are there as the PSA. We've been advocating, and we still believe that we are going to advocate for better way of negotiations. And as a professional trade union, we have already entered into a debate with the public government in a manner in which we can structure our negotiations. When must we communicate? When must we start negotiations? One of the key elements that has been missing is to factor the period of when government deals with issues of budgeting. And that is the element that was missing all the time. Because if you go to negotiations after the budget has been cut, it's very difficult because you are left with just a slice of a pie which you must cut across and share it. But if you are able to influence budget, to say what are the needs of workers, what are the things that needs to be put there? As I've said, Iman, to say that today we are sitting with a situation with many public servants who could not afford to go to work, many public servants who are not able to repay their loans. 75% of salaries ends into paying debts. So all of those things, it means as workers, as trade unions, we need to intensify to ensure that we improve the life of public servants.
Yeah.
We ensure that the public servants are there every day to serve the public. We want to see a police officer not deterred by means of not having money to go to work. We want a police officer who would have money to go to work and serve the South Africans.
Simphiwe?
Well, we think that if we were to improve, first there should be a clear political will around the issue of concluding negotiations, because one of the biggest challenges, as Comrade Reuben has alluded, which also in my experience I've seen that it's been a stumbling block as far as ensuring that we've got a progressive way of dealing with collective bargaining, is that our negotiations are not aligned with the budgeting cycle. You find that the budget is tabled and already money is allocated. So as you sit around the bargaining table, you sit with a predetermined outcome, because government would go there, positional, because they have what they have just to offer what has been allocated. But if we are able to influence the budget, you negotiate before the budget has been allocated, then that's a more progressive way of dealing with collective bargaining and ensuring that you give workers properly. But the other issue is that we don't necessarily have to focus on what we call the cost of living adjustment. There are many things that can be done to improve the lives of public servants. One of those things is that what is guaranteed in the Constitution is that every citizen in the country is guaranteed the right to dignity. And we think that those public servants who are renting back rooms in various townships and so forth, what government could be doing is to give them houses. Then you are already dealing with the cost of them having to buy bonds and all those things, because what we call the missing middle, those who don't qualify for bonds, they also don't qualify for RTP houses. They are in majority in the public sector. And we think that if government were to think outside the box when negotiations are done, and we think of many ways, because the whole point of collective bargaining is about improving the lives of workers. It's not necessarily about putting money in their pockets, but it's about improving their living conditions. And we think that if we're to think outside the box, they become beneficiaries of some of these issues of bursaries and so forth. We think that that could assist, but we appreciate that progress has been made. For instance, if you look at NSFAS, there's now a new provision which has been introduced for children of this missing middle that we talk about. And we think that will go a long way as far as ensuring that, we're able to deal with some of these challenges, and we're able to also give public servants better working conditions, better living conditions, as well as their dignity back, because that is important.
I'm going to leave it there with you. Sorry, just want to give Mugwena a chance as well, just to come in very quickly to talk about, and you've heard your, again, fellow panelists talk about being proactive when it comes to the workers' cause, when it comes to negotiations. Your final word.
Yeah, Iman, I fully agree with my colleagues that we have signed a collective agreement that really will then clarify and redefine the processes of negotiation. But obviously, where we can be able to share information is very, very critical if we want to speed up the process of negotiations, taking into account what you have asked, Iman, that we are serving the public. We are building the nation as the teachers. And we're always saying, whenever we bargain, whenever we want to improve the well-being of our teachers, it's because we want to achieve that ultimate goal of providing better services, quality services to our people. Because if we don't improve that, we don't retain the good teachers in the system. If we don't improve the well-being and don't improve the salaries of our teachers, we're not able to recruit new teachers into the system. And therefore, that thing is what it is affecting the quality of education for our people and affecting our economy, because what we do in education is really to build skills, is really to develop and empower people so that they are then able to contribute positively to their communities and so forth. So it needs to be understood from that perspective that it is not about denying the public services. It's about wanting to improve those particular services by improving the inputs by the workers. So we fully agree that we'll do everything that we can to improve the budget, the negotiations, but austerity measures don't work.
Okay, got to leave it there, gentlemen. Got to leave it there. As my mom says, out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks, and there's certainly a lot of fullness there on your part in terms of how you view where workers stand and how the future of work and worker rights have to be evolved in South Africa. Thank you to you all, Reuben, Maleka, Simphiwe, Gada, and Mugwena, Maluleke. More news and views at the top of the hour. Please stay with me.